This is the country where the leader chooses the color of people's cars, changes the calendar, controls the press, restricts citizens from traveling abroad, and bans women from sitting in the front seat of the car. But make no mistake, we are not talking about North Korea, but about one of the most hermetic and totalitarian countries that few people know or have heard of: Turkmenistan. Here, women in particular are submissive and subject to unique restrictions. But why is it so secret? What restrictions are imposed on women? And why does hardly anyone hear about this place? In this video, you will find all the answers from an unknown and mysterious country where women have almost no rights. Turkmenistan is located in Central Asia, and more than 50% of its territory is covered by extensive desert. Despite its small population of just over 6 million people, the country is a giant in terms of natural resources, especially natural gas, which accounts for no less than 80% of exports. The Turkmen nation enchants with its natural and cultural diversity. Its natural wonders include the Karakum Desert, the Ashgabat Salt Lake, and the majestic Kopet Dağ Mountains. And while we are on the subject of the Karakum Desert, there is the famous Gates of Hell, a flaming crater that has been burning since 1971, and which, curiously, no one knows how it originated. The most widely accepted theory is that while Soviet geologists were drilling for oil in the Karakum Desert, they found a natural gas reservoir in its place. This caused the Earth to collapse, forming 3 large sinkholes. To prevent the methane from being released into the atmosphere, they decided to set fire to one of the sinkholes, thinking that the burning would last only a few weeks. But it ended up lasting forever. Another version says that the huge crater was formed in the 1960s and began to burn about 20 years later. There is controversy as to whether the fire was accidental, perhaps caused by lightning, or whether it was intentional. In any case, the fire has endured for years, becoming a spectacle and one of the most visited tourist attractions in the country. The majority of the population professes the Islamic faith, which contributes to characterizing the country as a patriarchal state, where women are expected to be totally submissive to their fathers and husbands. And it should be noted here that Turkmenistan is among the 15 worst countries in terms of religious freedom, according to the International Religious Freedom Commission. Although new, with only 32 years of independence, Turkmenistan has a history that goes back at least 10,000 years, from the times when it was part of empires such as the Parthian, Mongol, and Persian empires, to the time of Russian rule in 1869. The country joined the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics in 1924, but it was not until October 27, 1991, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, that Turkmenistan proclaimed its independence. Since then, the Turkmen population has been confronted with the peculiarities and cruelties of its leaders, which began with Saparmurat Atayevich Niyazov in 1985, when he was still leader of the Communist Party resisting the Soviet Union, and who elected himself president for life since 1999. During his authoritarian and repressive rule, he left a legacy marked by a cult of personality. You know that cult we see in North Korea, where citizens have the image of the leaders everywhere, besides worshipping and bringing flowers to the giant bronze statues? Yes, but here it is a bit more radical. One of the most notable manifestations of the president's personality cult was when he decided to change the names of the months of the year and the days of the week, even giving his own name to the month of January. He also wrote a book entitled Ruhnama, translated as The Book of the Soul, which became a spiritual guide for living according to the precepts he himself established. This book was imposed as compulsory reading in all universities, as well as being a requirement for civil servants and even for passing driving tests. Doctors were not spared either. Instead of taking the Hippocratic Oath, the norm was to swear an oath to the president. The problem is that he was not only eccentric, he was cruel. To give you an idea, in 2005, libraries and hospitals in rural areas were closed, forcing rural people to travel to Ashgabat for medical care without justification. People were dying on the way because they could not get there in time. In addition, the leader had a peculiar aversion to animals, especially dogs. Stray dogs and cats were persecuted and slaughtered, and citizens were forbidden to have more than one pet. freedom of expression was non-existent. The opposition was silenced, journalists were persecuted, and any attempt to disagree with the regime was met with arrests or assaults. Relatives of opponents were constantly threatened, creating a general climate of fear. Not to mention the internet ban. In 2006, the regime's cruelty also hit the elderly when Niyazov cut the retirement benefits of a third of the elderly and reduced the pensions of others, demanding the return of the amounts received in the previous 2 years. While people were dying without medical help and the elderly lacked food and medicine, the streets of the capital displayed revolving golden statues in honor of the leader, valued at millions of dollars. His face had to appear on everything from postage stamps to bank bills. Want more? Every citizen received a watch with the image of the president, and places such as schools, airports, and even a meteorite were renamed in his honor. The country became a strange spectacle, where the will of the leader was the only law and freedom of forgotten luxury. However, as the saying goes, nothing is so bad that it can't get worse. And after the death of the dictator disguised as president in December 2006, the next to lead the country was Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, who, interestingly enough, was the health minister and dentist of the last leader. At first, Berdimuhamedov revoked many of the decrees signed by Niyazov and promised to eradicate the cult of the leader. He facilitated travel, reopened libraries in rural areas, and restored the traditional names of the months of the year and days of the week. All seemed to be going well, but it did not take long for him to show his unconventional methods. He dismantled the previous leader's sect, but only to found his own. Monuments have been named after him. Bookstores have been filled with his works. His photographs have been spread around hotels, hospitals, bars, and restaurants. And we can also say that he is vain and narcissistic. He loves to share videos in which he demonstrates his musical talent, drives powerful cars, participates in physical strength competitions, and even teaches civil servants how to exercise. All to convey a message of happy, fair, and invigorated government, which of course becomes a meme for neighboring nations who know about it. He also decided to make a gigantic gold-plated statue in the heart of the capital to replace that of the former leader. Dogs, banned under the previous government, are now mandatory, and several statues of these faithful companions have been erected. He loves these animals so much that he even gifted a puppy to Russia's supreme leader. Who doesn't remember the famous 2017 video of Putin's reaction to seeing this character holding his dog in an unconventional way? Putin, who obviously adores these faithful companions, rushed to take the little animal from the Turkmen president and kissed it in front of the cameras, a scene that provoked several reactions and comments. Animal advocates would love the Russian leader if they didn't know him so well, wouldn't they? But returning to the Turkmen leader, in addition to dogs, another animal that cannot be missing are equines, and in practically all his appearances, he has to be on a horse adorned with golden leashes and cages. Eccentricities may have varied, but as far as the press and freedom of expression are concerned, nothing has changed. In fact, it has only gotten worse over time. In 2008, for example, the president attacked satellite dishes, which were the only way to access uncontrolled information. This deprived the population of Russian, Turkish, or Arab satellite channels, which were an alternative to state media propaganda. In January 2013, the country passed a media law that, in theory, guaranteed freedom of expression and prohibited censorship. However, in practice, this law appears to be only a facade, as the state continues to fully control the media and punish those who go against the official narrative. Reporters Without Borders has included President Berdimuhamedov on a list of 39 world leaders and politicians it considers enemies of freedom and information. Freedom in the World, which measures civil liberties, gave the country a score of 2, lower than North Korea's 3. Freedom of the press in the country is as scarce as sugar, eggs, bread, or money. Unemployment is around 60%, but official figures are only 3%. The newspapers mainly publish official reports on the grain harvest, gas production, and the progress of democracy in the country. However, they do not report on incidents or problems of concern to the population. A clear example of this restriction of press freedom is the requirement that all newspapers have a picture of the national leader on the front page. At the same time, the headline photo is sent centrally, and all newspapers have the same image. It was also advertised that internet access was free, but the catch here is that it is only possible to access Turkmenet, a censored intranet. Moreover, few people have access to it due to financial and bureaucratic barriers, and the use of VPN is totally forbidden. In other words, even for those who can access the internet, many sites are blocked. Opposition websites, human rights organizations, and Western social networks, such as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, WhatsApp, and even Telegram are inaccessible. The Turkmen government's information manipulation extended even during the COVID-19 pandemic. The supreme leader banned the use of the word coronavirus in the country, and disinformation around the subject was part of the information control strategy. And of course, we cannot fail to mention the remodeling by the president of a part of the country's capital that has been rebuilt with luxurious architecture, using lots and lots of white marble. However, this new part of the city, despite its splendor, looks like a ghost town because the population cannot afford to live there. And white is probably the president's favorite color, as black cars have been banned from streets across the country since 2014. Another strange fact is that in the country's capital, it is even worse. Vehicles of all colors except white have been seized and their owners fined. Those who recovered their vehicles were forced to sign an agreement to paint them white, at most silver. And in the midst of all this eccentricity, if you can call it that, it is the women who suffer doubly. Remember we talked about religious persecution at the beginning of the video? Here, women who adopt another religion often face many problems. In addition to being labeled as disobedient, the consequences are severe: domestic violence, house arrest, sexual assault, and even forced marriages. In the same year that black cars were banned, women, who already faced obstacles in obtaining a driver's license, were strictly prohibited from driving in the country. In addition to the driving ban, other restrictions have been imposed, such as access to beauty services including eyelash extensions, nails, Botox injections, plastic surgery, and even manicures. Beauty salons were closed following a police notice prohibiting procedures and service to unauthorized clients, under threat of fines or jail time for the offense. Female teachers were forbidden to dye their hair, and all women were forbidden to wear jeans or any tight-fitting clothing. Female staff members were required to sign a pledge promising to abandon beauty services and to wear the traditional balak, wide embroidered pants, along with traditional dresses. Failure to comply with this promise could lead to dismissal or more serious consequences. Students of all grades were required to adhere to a strict dress code, with each university specifying the color and fabric texture of dresses, as well as being obliged to wear national costumes, tie their hair in braids, and wear the national takya. A new president was elected in 2022 who happens to be the son of the previous president and will apparently follow in his father's footsteps. Under the new management, in addition to not allowing them to drive, they are prohibited from occupying the front seat of cabs and private cars. And male drivers are prohibited from offering rides to women who are not relatives, requiring female passengers to present documents proving their relationship to the driver. The official justification is that a woman in the front seat is contrary to national traditions, considered shameful and even sinful. But now let's get to the question that won't go away. Why is all this happening, and no one knows about it? Unfortunately, international organizations find it difficult to meaningfully influence the human rights situation in the country, while the leaders of other nations show more interest in Turkmenistan's natural wealth and resources than in human rights violations, unlike Korea, for example, which has nothing of value to offer. This scenario of isolation contributes to the fact that what happens in the country remains largely invisible to the outside world. In short, you know the monkey emoji. Nobody sees anything, nobody says anything, and nobody hears anything. That's why almost nobody knows about the situation in Turkmenistan, and probably you have never heard of it. If you have not yet subscribed, please do so for more fascinating stories. Thank you to all of you who have joined us, and see you next time.